Jack Hebert. So thank you, Jack, for joining us, who is the founder of the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. So we're really excited that you're joining us and to learn more about the center and the work that you do. And then we're going to have some discussion about the fall retreat, which is scheduled for the week of October 2nd. And thanks to all of you who have filled out the retreat survey form. And we'll be going over those responses. And then we'll also talk about support over the summer recess. And then we'll just end with some next steps. So with no further ado, Jack, if I could turn it over to you, that would be great.
Well, thank you. And thanks for inviting me. I've run into a lot of folks over the years from Arizona, Northern Arizona State University that have done work up here in Alaska. So, but wasn't really aware of this group, which of course is incredibly timely given the challenges we're all facing. And I'm sorry I didn't put together any kind of a PowerPoint that would leave you astonished on my amazing photography skills. But I guess the most important thing is just to introduce ourselves and what we do to all of you so that we can be part of this amazing team. My gosh, I don't know how many Alaskans are out. So just to give you a little background on who we are, and I'm kind of a we guy rather than a me guy. But on the me side, I've had a wonderful and remarkable life here in Alaska. I came up here right after college, and I'm getting a little long in the tooth because that was 52 years ago. So I've been here a long time, but I don't talk about how long I've been here because my heart and my relationships, many of them are with folks that have been here for families have been here for 10 and 20,000 years. So it's a little silly. You know, Alaskans like to brag about how long they've been here, us colonizers. You know, oh, I've been here 10 years, I'm a sourdough. Well, you talk to the real people, the first people, they don't talk about that. That's not even on their radar. It seems kind of ridiculous. So I've been here a very short while. It's been a wonderful, I mean, it's just really defined my life. And I've been a home builder and designer and, you know, a person that lived the old life when I first came here up in the Northwest Arctic in a log and sod house because I wanted to experience that in my naivety. And of course, we have this group that is the majority in Alaska now. 3/4 of the population is folks from elsewhere, 1/4 is Alaska. And I've learned over those years a lot and how naive I really was. So anyway, built a lot of homes, designed homes in Fairbanks, had some wonderful clients, raised a wonderful family. And so that brings us to the 90s. And in the 90s, we were dealing with, in both rural and urban Alaska, the legacy of terrible building science that had been introduced into Alaska. In the western side of things, didn't work. In the indigenous world, was a disaster. Just did not, was not durable, was not healthy, created the highest respiratory distress in children and adults, elders in the nation due to poor indoor air quality, mold, literally just incredibly inadequate houses, which is still a legacy that we deal with, both in the indigenous world and in the Western world on the road system and elsewhere. So out of that frustration, at that time, I was president of the Alaska State Home Builders and on the executive board of the National Association of Home Builders, and had been whining about this for years, about there was no original research being done in Alaska to address the problems we were facing. So in the late 90s, with a group of others that were in the industry and friends who were interested in building science and a way too small group of First Alaskans, we founded the Cold Climate Housing Research Center to do real applied research, not things that would go on a shelf, not endless meetings and discussions about how smart we are, but to actually look at the problems and look for solutions and actually apply those solutions in the real world. I think over the years we have made some progress, not nearly enough. The problems persist. The challenges are larger. And over that period of time in our early years, again, just as this young guy who was living in a sod igloo in Northwest Arctic all those years ago, I was a whole lot more naive than I thought I was. The challenges are so big, and the disconnect, particularly with First Nations and First People, continues. Meanwhile, the changes that are occurring environmentally because of this climatic wave that we're dealing with are making our efforts all the more important and urgent. But those efforts, we have learned over time, have got to be on the first level, particularly in rural Alaska, but maybe in all of Alaska, has got to draw on the indigenous knowledge that the first people had here. There is absolutely no doubt of their ability to adapt. There is absolutely no doubt of their talents to deal with the challenges that life is facing. They have been doing this since my people were in caves in France, living in one of the most difficult places on earth and finding solutions. How do you figure out how to hunt a whale? You know, just off the top of your head. Well, it's complicated. It takes that indigenous knowledge and those traditions to be able to do that. And the relationship that the first people have with land and place. They don't call a shelter a home. They call the land, the Nuna, the home. Shelter is a tool for survival. Water, food, shelter. Those are the bases of what we needed. So over these years, we have, in all our efforts, tried to keep that perspective and the perspective of the first people, the successes of the first people, the priceless values that the first people throughout the world, and of course we are all at our roots indigenous people. We have just lost our way. The people here have not lost their way. Where those traditions are continuing, many of those traditions. Now you take housing, however, and we're just got a long way to go. When we look at the problems that are occurring in the coastal communities, in the riverine communities, of climatic change and the inability to move infrastructure affordably. If you have to move a community, one, you want to do it right. And two, how much is it going to cost? And the costs in rural Alaska are staggering. There is literally no regular transportation system. Everything has to be brought in. No road system by plane or boat. And we are talking about a state, and I think many of you know this, but just to remind you, that used to be 4 time zones. We stretch from Washington, D.C. to San Diego. It's a big place. We like to joke about Texas all the time. How many Texases would it take to create an Alaska? And if we were divided in thirds, that's about the size of Texas itself. And yet we stretch so long from the Aleutian Islands, which really goes into the next day, back to West Coast, Seattle. So big area. Now we also have, you say, well, the Alaska problem, this design a home and buildings or a house. I got to change my name or my description of home and keep it on the land being the home. But when we design buildings and infrastructure, we are dealing with challenges that in the environment, irregardless of climate change, that are huge. Our southernmost community has the same heating degree days, meaning the same number of days that you require heat in order to have a comfortable environment in the house. It's the same basically as northern North Dakota. And you add on to it, well, that's nice. Then that's Ketchikan's pretty easy. But they get 200 inches of rain a year. And that isn't rain that falls straight down. That is rain that comes with wind velocity that literally, if you do cladded siding, drives water up the siding. It doesn't just fall down, and gravity works nicely, because as it comes up a hillside, that rain is not coming up from up there, it's coming from down there. So there's a challenge. But that is our most mild place in the state. And we go from 5,000 heating degrees there, that measure of how much heat you need, to on the north slope of Alaska and in interior communities, 20,000 heating degree days, with temperatures as cold as -60, still air temperature, not the temperature that's really hitting you. So when we talk about chill factor in Alaska, one of the things we say is put your back to it, stupid. Because the ambient air temperature can be 60 below, 50 below, 40 below, with a 40 and 50 mile an hour wind. So that's -100. All that said, I mean, from our Western perspective, oh my God, look at this. From the indigenous perspective, it's home. And they have learned over millennium, thousands and thousands of years, to find a richness of life on all levels, a connection to place on all levels, a symbiotic relationship with all the pieces that we require for healthy communities, healthy families, healthy individuals, a deep spiritual life. And yet when we came in, we burned all their libraries. We burned their libraries by taking away their languages. We, us colonizers. It is incredibly encouraging, the changes that are occurring, the revitalization of languages, the respect for those indigenous traditions, a respect for their humanity and the values that the first people have that they can share with us, who have really lost our way. So I'm encouraged by what is happening. I feel an urgency that we just aren't moving quickly enough. We are doing together whole village relocations. When we define the we, who are the we? And who are the we is very much skewed toward the Western lens and not the indigenous lens. We have not given enough effort to developing professionals in our world, professionals, to help with some of the issues of whole village relocations that are indigenous people. And so a great effort needs to happen in order to incorporate people from the homelands to be in the lead. And those of us with Western perspective, those of us with 21st century technology, to blend those in a symbiotic relationship. I need to define, because it, in my introduction, the introduction of who I am, yes, I founded the Cold Climate Research Center and I ran the Cold Climate Research Center for decades. But we are now part of the National Renewable Energy Lab. There's been a big transition in the last 2 years, a very positive transition. So here we are in the Arctic, and we are really the farthest north campus of the National Renewable Energy Lab now. So we are not just the Cold Climate Housing Research Center. All the talent that was there, and all the talent, and our building, and our facility, which is now leased by NREL, all the talent, the human talent, moved over to work for NREL, keeping our autonomy and our culture internally in the organization intact. So there's changes occurring, and we're doing a rebranding for everyone to be aware of that. The work that was done with all these years is the same people, but now NREL's Alaska campus. There is still a Cold Climate Housing Research Center, the 501c3, that owns the facility. They have 1 employee. But that's not important. What's important is the mission, and that we accomplish things together. Being part of NREL gives us the strength of that lab. 2,600 talented, mission-driven people that we are now part of their family. So we can draw on that talent. So we'll get more done. But that's kind of where we are now. And as I said before, I tried to define our relationship and our changes. I'm encouraged. And the thing that I'm encouraged at is that first, people are at the table. The native people of North America and South America are still here. Their strength is growing, and their recognition and pride of who they are, just watching from outside, even though I am, through relationships, part of an Inuit family, watching from outside makes me very happy and encouraged. And I think that we need to have as many of those folks whose memories and experiences with this truly sustainable way of living to be at the table to help us all find a way as humanity is exciting and needs to grow. So that's probably enough. I just wanted to, I'm happy to be here. I don't know if I'll have a long-term involvement with this group or not, but I would love to because you're trying to do the same thing. We don't have the luxury of having our own ambitions guide us anymore. It has to be the we. We have to move forward together. We, all people, all human beings, with respect for all beings, sky beings, water beings, air beings, insect beings, all of them. We're all in a symbiotic relationship on this earth. Has to be respect for all of it to move ahead if the human beings are going to be here. We'll make it. I do believe we will. There's a lot of work to do. Bless all of you for the contributions that you make.
Great. Thank you so much, Jack. It was really great to hear your stories of how, how the center came into being and your own personal story and journey as well. So thank you. Yeah, we'd like to open it up for questions now. And yeah, please feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions, or feel free to type in the chat